Hi everyone and welcome to today's video. So as you can probably tell from the title, today I want to talk to you a little bit more about IBS because I did do a video a couple of months ago all about my story and kind of briefly outlining my journey with IBS, but I feel like I do have a lot more to say on the topic, and I was really overwhelmed actually at how many of you have got in touch with me since that video and how many of you had questions for me. So I thought it might be worth doing another video, this time more of a Q&A, so I can answer some of your questions because I have tried to answer every single one of them in the comments, but I thought it might be interesting to touch upon some of them a little bit more, and some of you have also emailed me more questions, so I thought I would really elaborate on them in this video. In terms of the content that is out there already on YouTube all about IBS, I feel like obviously there is quite a bit because I've done a search and it brings up quite a wide variety of videos, but I feel like a lot of them are from professionals or doctors, or they've been filmed by kind of health companies to try and help us understand IBS, rather than anyone that's suffering themselves and knows too well the emotional aspects, because I feel like when you get diagnosed with IBS, it can be a bit overwhelming because you're not really sure what it means, you're not really sure whether it means that you're going to get a solution, and you're also bombarded with formal information that doesn't quite do justice to how you're feeling. I feel like sometimes IBS can be written off as a really trivial thing because obviously some people don't suffer with it too badly, and it might be something that they get a flare-up of every few months. But for some of you, and me included, it can be something that affects you on a daily basis. It can have a massive impact on your relationships, on your social life, on your career, on your education. So I feel like sometimes in the past when I've spoken to doctors about it, it's kind of been brushed under the carpet as, oh, it's just IBS, you'll be fine, here's some leaflets. And I remember once my mum bought me a book all about IBS, and I was just so embarrassed by the condition and the fact that there was a picture of a toilet sign on the book, and it was just made to be this thing that wasn't really helpful because it didn't relate to me, it wasn't personal, and I felt like lots of the information was just regurgitated from doctors' advice rather than anyone that had suffered with it themselves and knew what an emotional toll it had on their life. So I just want to let you know that if you are suffering from it and you're feeling like no one really understands and it's very isolating, then please just know that I can completely empathise with you, and I've been there, and I want you to know that there is ways of managing it, there is ways for it to not affect your daily life. I still have it, but I've definitely found ways around it. It can be really upsetting because you think, why can't I just be normal? Why can't I just have a stomach that functions properly? And trust me, I've been there. I've missed out on so many social situations and things that I felt like I should have been at, but actually looking back, I'm really glad that I am where I am now, and I feel like a lot of that is down to my IBS because it actually helped me to reassess what was important and what wasn't. And I also feel like it's helped me become really in tune with my own body, which is only a good thing. But anyway, I know I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there. I want to chat through some of the questions that I get asked quite a lot. So I'm just going to scroll through YouTube. If you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing, and just answer quickly a few of your questions. Obviously, as I said, I have answered them already in the comments, and I just want to take the time to reply to you personally because I really appreciate it if you've taken the time to comment. So there was a comment from a girl called Olivia Garrison who said, I'm 16 and going through this, and especially the anxiety will trigger my IBS to the point where I'm scared to go on trips and even go and hang out with friends because I don't know if there will be a bathroom around. Many of my family members and friends don't understand how badly it affects me, and I agree it's hard to talk to people and even my gastroenterologist. I wish I could find something to work quickly because it affects my everyday life. I'm embarrassed to go on dates with boys and go to school and just to leave the house. So thank you for talking about this and being so reassuring that I'm not alone. So I did leave Olivia a really long comment back, and thank you so much, Olivia, for taking the time to leave a comment. Firstly, I'm really sorry to hear that you're suffering and that you're worried about going on dates and leaving the house. I can completely empathise. I feel like it's hard enough being a teenager and navigating school life without having IBS on top of it. And I do remember when I used to be in the classroom sitting next to boys and having crushes and things. That's such a cringy word, I know, but I can't think of another word for it. And you know, that is hard enough to deal with in itself, let alone worrying about whether you're going to need to rush out to go to the toilet any minute. And I remember my school used to have this policy where you could only go to the toilet during break times. And so I felt like me constantly worrying about whether I'd need to leave made me a much more reserved person and a much more shy person, because I didn't want to draw any extra attention to myself in the fear that somebody would realise what my inner turmoil was. So I would just say, firstly, you're doing an amazing job so far. IBS is such a difficult thing to deal with at times, but I promise there are things that you can do to make sure that you manage it. I feel like IBS is always going to be something that if we have it, we're always going to have it. But the symptoms might just ebb and flow and cause us problems sometimes and not others. But I think the main thing to remember is not to blame yourself and try not to succumb to that panic that we feel when a flare-up starts, because I know that panic all too well, where we're like, oh, not this again, you know, I was feeling slightly normal and then this is happening and this is going to ruin this and this. Try not to get into that downward spiral, because it can actually make your symptoms worse. If you need to, just take the time out and recover and recuperate and focus on you, take your mind off things. I would really recommend meditation. I use an app called Headspace, which is completely free and it takes 10 minutes a day. And it's really good for kind of getting you out of that downward spiral, being really positive, and also learning how to manage your thoughts, because it is normal to be anxious, it's normal to be worried, but it's not normal to let them completely overwhelm you and also cause you problems like IBS. I would say, in terms of worrying about whether there will be a bathroom nearby, this is obviously a big concern for us, and I completely empathise with you on that. If you are planning to go somewhere, I'd always call ahead kind of subtly and ask what the facilities are. It always helps calm me down if I feel a little bit more in control, because obviously I think the main anxiety with IBS is that you're out of control of your body, and that is quite scary, because often I felt like my body is letting me down, which isn't a good way to think, but I feel like lots of us do worry about that. Always remember that you can only do your best, and if you need to leave, you need to leave. No one's going to ask you otherwise, and if you do have people giggling or making fun or whatever, then it just helps you realise who your true friends are. I know that I've filtered a lot of friends out this way, and I feel like it's an immaturity on their part if they can't support you and be there for you. So I think the best thing to do is just be honest and try and relax and take it as it comes. Obviously, it's also great to have a daily management plan, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. So the next question is from Kirsten Burgett. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong there. I've been afraid to talk about it before, but oh my god, my sophomore year of high school was terrible because of my IBS. I'd have panic attacks a lot. In fear, my stomach would start to make those crazy noises. It's held me back from going out and enjoying myself with others because I'm too scared I'll have an attack. But mostly I'm afraid of my stomach making noises because I'll be embarrassed, and I wish it didn't affect me so much, but it does. I'm terrified of doing things, and it usually hits me most when I'm in a quiet place, like when we're in the middle of taking a test. That's when the panic comes in and my stomach starts acting up. Well, Kirsten, I feel like you have summed me up in a nutshell, basically, because that was my biggest anxiety at school. I think because I was so afraid to ask to go to the toilet because I knew our school's rules, I would just hold everything in. I know that sounds disgusting, but nothing is TMI in this video, I can assure you. So I would hold everything in, and inevitably that would make these gurgling, crazy noises from my stomach. It literally felt like something was trying to escape from there. And now I joke and call it like the alien in my stomach, and you know, I try and find the light side of it. But obviously when you're at school and you're sitting next to someone you fancy, or you're sitting next to a group of people, or you're taking a test, then it can be really distracting and it can cause a lot of panic. I feel like this was my biggest anxiety at school, and I also feel it's where my anxiety disorder stems from, because I do get panic attacks when I feel I'm in a place that I can't easily excuse myself from or easily escape from. and in quiet places where I feel like my stomach is going to flare up. And I have had a few flare-ups in the last few years, touch wood. I haven't had one in the last year because I've been managing it, and I also run my own business, which I feel like is a better position for me to be in because I can regain some of that control because I know what's happening, kind of thing. I did work for someone else in my gap year, so I had a job for a year and I had meetings and things like that, and I would always worry about those meetings because I'd think, I know my stomach is going to make these crazy noises, I'm worried that people are going to look at me, I'm worried what they're going to think. There's so much going through your head, and obviously all those anxious thoughts just bubbles up your stomach and it makes it so much worse. Also, I feel like because IBS is an invisible condition, a lot of people can't see how it's affecting you, but obviously those stomach noises are an outward thing and other people can hear them. So I felt like having them was revealing my secret and other people were going to realise what I was going through. And so I think there was a whole host of things that just made me so anxious about those situations. But I think there's certain things that I've come to realise in the last few years, especially working for myself, that have really helped me deal with those things. So I think the first one to remember is that no one is concentrating on you. I know it's hard to believe because we do worry about what other people think, but most people are also worrying about themselves as well. So they don't really focus on you and they're probably not noticing your stomach. It always sounds louder to us because obviously it's in our body, but I guarantee most of the time people won't have heard it. If they have heard it and you're worried, I would just make light of it and make a joke, because I do find that the best cure for those anxious thoughts is laughter and positivity. So just try and laugh it off. I know it's difficult, but I feel like if you have a stigma attached to it that it's bad and you're out of control and it's panic inducing, then you're always going to have those thoughts when it starts happening. So try and break the spiral a little bit and just be as positive as you can. Try not to let the thoughts run away with you. And as I said, the Headspace app can really help with that because it helps ground you. If you start panicking, I would definitely recommend counting down from 10, sipping some water, and also focusing on noticing certain things around you. Because I feel like when the panic sets in, you really kind of go into yourself and it's kind of shutting down, and I can't really explain it. And obviously I'm not an expert, so please don't take my advice completely 100%, but these are just things that have worked for me. I know this is the weirdest thing in the world. I always used to find that taking my shoes off really helped, because especially if I had like no socks on underneath, I feel like the grounding of having your feet on carpet or grass or something like that can really help. And obviously focusing on your breathing as well, because I feel like if you deep breathe, you can't panic. That's my theory anyway. I know I've probably waffled on way too much there, and I'm sorry if that didn't answer your question at all, but I have also included a comment where you've commented as well. So I can't find where it is on my phone because I'm actually not logged in because I've forgotten my password. But I know that someone commented saying, how do you manage your IBS on a daily basis and what things can I do to try and manage my symptoms? So I think this is largely trial and error. Obviously different things work for different people, and what works for me might not necessarily work for you, but I would definitely try these things because I know with IBS you're willing to try anything if it helps, and I've definitely been there. I can definitely empathise with that. So I would firstly recommend to get yourself a good probiotic which you take daily, because that helps reset your gut bacteria. And when you have your gut health in check, that really helps to restore an equilibrium, and I feel like it's a much better basis to go off. So I use a brand called Alflorex, which I take on a daily basis. Whenever you remember, you don't have to take it in the morning, you don't have to take it at night. You also don't have to store them in the fridge, which is great because I travel a lot and that is really awkward when you have to do that. They do tend to take a few weeks for you to notice the difference, but I did find that after 2 or 3 weeks my symptoms were starting to settle down, and I just felt that it kind of normalised everything. So if I did eat a food that I usually reacted to quite badly, I tend to find that I wouldn't react as badly. Or if I had certain stressful situations coming up, I did find that the symptoms weren't as bad. So whilst I do think that there's other things you can do to help, the probiotics is such a good basis, and I do think if you suffer from IBS, then you definitely should be taking a daily probiotic. The second thing is food, which I wish I'd realised sooner has such a drastic effect on your IBS symptoms. Obviously, what goes in must come out, and that is a basis that I should have lived by a long time ago. About 2.5 years ago, I took a food intolerance test and it came back that I was quite severely intolerant to dairy and eggs. So pretty much overnight I cut them out and my symptoms almost disappeared, to be honest. They got so much better, and I used to have episodes where I would eat something, but I would have episodes where I would literally have to sit on the toilet for about 3 hours. I was so bloated, I felt sick, I felt exhausted. If I did eat anything, it would go straight through me and I had to miss all my lectures and everything. So those episodes pretty much bedbound me and I just couldn't live with them anymore. So I was so pleased that when I did cut out dairy, those disappeared completely. If you do suffer from IBS or digestive symptoms, I would 100% recommend you cut out dairy for a month and see if it makes a difference. Obviously, not everyone is dairy or lactose intolerant, and they are different things, so I do research into both. I am dairy intolerant, so it means that I can't eat any form of dairy, not just the lactose enzyme. But it's hidden in so many things, and it's actually scary how much stuff has cow's milk, butter, cheese, everything like that. It's put into a lot of our products without us knowing. So always read the labels and stick to it as much as you can, because it does make such a big difference. And while I do miss things like ice cream and chocolate and cheese, which I did eat a lot of before, it's so much nicer to have control of my body, and I definitely take control over a nice cake any day. It's given me my life back to not eat dairy, so I just wouldn't jeopardize that. Obviously, if you can't afford a food intolerance test because they are quite expensive, I would just recommend to keep a food diary for a few months and note down everything you're eating and how you feel after each meal. Obviously, when you go to the toilet, how many times, if you're bloated, if you're gassy, various things, and you will soon start to notice patterns. So that is a really good way to find your triggers. Another thing I would recommend if you do find that you are mainly bloated or you get a lot of stomach cramps, because I feel like that was one of my main things, aside from going to the toilet a lot, it was that I felt extremely bloated and that I had agonising stomach cramps to the point where they used to wake me up in the night, and I would ring the NHS helpline and I was convinced that I was dying because I didn't understand why it hurt so much. It literally felt like someone was trying to rip a knife through my intestines, which, as you can imagine, is not the most pleasant of feelings. And as I said, I was constantly bloated to the point that I looked about 6 months pregnant. I had to have 4 different sizes in my wardrobe so that I would be able to account for however I was feeling that day. So for the gas production and the bloating, I would recommend drinking 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar a day, diluted in water. Now, this is probably going to be the most disgusting thing that you've ever had in your life, but I promise it will help. Have it in the morning, and then if you're still feeling not great in the evening, then I'd have another one. Just make sure you are diluting it properly in water, and do a little bit of research about which apple cider vinegar to get, because some of them can have added stuff in, so just get the organic pure version. This stuff, I don't know what's in it, but it's absolutely magic, and it's a saviour for so many conditions, including IBS. I've found it's helped me massively, and it's really improved the bloating and gas production side of things. I also find weirdly that it's helped with tiredness, so I would definitely recommend weaving that in if you're looking for something new to try. And then the third thing is stress management and CBT, because as you probably know, IBS is triggered by stress, and whilst it can come on when you don't think you're stressed, probably there is something going on in the background that has caused the symptoms to flare up. Managing stress is easier said than done, and it's not something that you can conquer overnight. I feel like lots of us are just naturally anxious people. I'm a really sensitive person, I always have been, and I probably always will. But that's not a fault or a flaw in my character, it's something that makes me conscientious, caring, kind, and creative. So I'm definitely happy that I'm that kind of person, but I do need to be aware of how my thoughts are manifesting, because sometimes it can overwhelm my day and be unhealthy. So it is healthy to be anxious a little bit and to worry a little bit, especially if you've got something coming up. That's totally healthy, and that isn't something that you should try and stop. But it's when those thoughts and anxiousness are causing you problems regularly that you probably need to look into doing something about it. So I had a course of CBT, which was really helpful. It's called Cognitive Behavioural Therapy in the UK. I'm not sure if it's called the same thing in the US, but I know that there are lots of videos about this on YouTube, so it's definitely something to look into. There are online courses, but you can also get yourself a therapist, so it totally depends on what would work for you. For something to do at home, as I said, I would recommend an app called Headspace because it's really great for weaving into your daily routine. And then I would also recommend a book called The Chimp Paradox, which is something that I have discovered recently from a recommendation from a friend. And it's a really, really good book at summarising our thoughts and how certain parts of us think about some things and certain parts of us focus on another thing. I won't reveal too much about it because I probably wouldn't do it justice, and while I have read it about 3 times over and it is brilliant and I can definitely stand by what it says, I don't want to talk about it too much because I know I probably won't explain things right, and you're much better off to read the book yourself. So hopefully I've covered quite a bit in this video and you found it to be relatively helpful. I know IBS is a really hard thing to deal with. It's very isolating sometimes and it can completely overwhelm your day. But please know that you're definitely not alone and there's lots of us suffering with it. It's just one of those things that not many people talk about. But I am really open and honest with it now, and that's helped me a lot actually, because I feel like speaking about it and not feeling like I need to hide that part of me is such a relief and it's such a weight off your shoulders. So I definitely find someone to confide in and just be open with it. As I said, if someone makes fun of it, then it's more of their problem than it is yours. And it just helps you to filter out who you should be investing your time and energy in. I know it can sometimes be trivialised and sometimes people can say, oh, it's not that bad, why are you worrying about it? But I feel like unless you're suffering with it yourself, then you don't really realise how much of an effect and how much of an impact it can have on someone's life. But I promise that you will get better, you will find something that works for you. And of course you can always comment, you can always email me and have a chat about it. I feel like sometimes it's just good to talk about it and confide in someone and get it out in the open. I guarantee that there's someone else, probably in your inner circle as well, because I feel like since I've been talking about it, so many more people that I know have opened up to me about it. And I feel like if I'd have known at school that some of my friends had been suffering too, it would have helped immensely. So a lot of what I want to do with these videos is just to open up a platform for you to chat about it. I want to be really open with you and I want to show you that you can live your life. It's not something that you need to be embarrassed about or hide, and you're definitely not alone. But I'm going to stop waffling now. Hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you very much for watching, and of course, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment box below. Thank you for taking your time to listen to me, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.